Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. This is Ujjwal and today we are creating this lovely card using heat embossing. This is something I like to call double embossing or layered embossing, and it is just a fun take on the general technique that we do. So I'm using this Stampetuous zinnia flower here. I absolutely love that stamp. It's big and it's great for all kinds of techniques. You could fuzzy cut, you could emboss, and you could watercolor and things like that. So it's my absolute favorite. And I'm going to use some Versamark ink. We are going to do embossing. So I'm using my powder tool there to get the static off the paper. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with Versamark ink and stamp on the paper. Make sure you apply good amount of pressure because the watercolor paper is a little textured, has texture on it, and you want to make sure that the impression is crisp and clean. So I'm stamping it again. I want to have two flowers on the bottom of my card. Once that is done, we are going to take some embossing powder. I'm using American Crafts Zing embossing powder. The color is butter and it's a very pretty pastel yellow color, and you can see now my flowers are showing through. I'm going to take a small paintbrush and just get the excess powder, if any, off the flower. And once that is done, we are going to heat emboss it. Make sure you keep the heat gun on for a little while so it's nice and hot, and the embossing would be quicker that way. So I'm just going to heat up the images here, and I love watching that powder melt. It's like magic still to me. So I'm using some time for coloring. I'm using some distress ink. This one is called Iced Spruce, and my water brush, and I'm picking up the ink from my craft mat to color in the flower. This is a great technique. If you're not using a craft mat, you could use your acrylic block. Just dab a little ink on the acrylic block and pick it up with your paintbrush. You do not have a water brush, you are absolutely good to go with a paintbrush as well. Just use a small bowl of water and some ink and a regular paintbrush. So I'm not being very particular with the coloring. I'm just filling it in the flower, in the petals. And now that I have embossed the image, I have a tiny little boundary, um, for the water, for the flower to hold in the water. The water won't seep out as easily as it would have if I had just stamped the image rather than embossing. So my embossing is acting as a little boundary to hold my color and water inside the lines. And what I've done is I have added a little bit of shading to the centers of the petals. I was not zoomed in there, so now you can see that I have added a bit of shading. Now I'm using my Versamark ink refill, and I'm using this clear sticky ink to cover the whole of my flowers. The idea here is to protect the coloring that I have done while I'm working with the background. So I'm just going to take this clear ink and cover the flowers completely with it. Now you could have approached this technique in a different way. You could have masked the flowers and then colored it in the regular way, but I think covering them with clear embossing powder makes it a tad bit easy, and the results are absolutely fantastic. So you might want to try it. We normally do this technique with solid images. You can just clear emboss them and they're protected, and then you can work on the background. But with images that are not solid, that have outlines, and you want to protect the coloring, this is just one way that I like doing, and the results are really great. So now I've colored and covered my image with Versamark ink there completely. I'm just making sure that not a lot of it is left out. I'm taking my clear embossing powder and I'm going to just pour it over my flowers, and you will see the coating that it will create. The embossing ink will hold that clear embossing powder very well. And now we are going to heat set it again. So again, I'm using a small paintbrush and making sure that the clear embossing powder is just on the flowers and not on the background, because we'll be coloring it in, and if there is embossing powder there, it will resist, my colors will resist that area and it won't look good. Now you can see that shiny surface on the flowers, that is because of the clear embossing that we did. So now we're trying to work on the background, and I'm using another color. I think this is called crushed olive, and I love this bright green there, and I think that the gray and the green would be a great combination on this card. So I'm just using a blending tool and roughly going on the whole of the paper. This paper is going to take a little more ink than usual because it's watercolor paper, and it is designed to absorb mediums. So I'm just going through roughly. I'm not being again, I'm not being very particular about the strokes or about how I'm going. I just want to fill the color in on the background, and you can now see the magic happening. Your colors are, your flowers are just the way they were, and even though I'm going over them, it's not affecting the flowers at all. So I'm buffing up the extra color on the flowers, any distressed ink that might have stuck on them. So I'm just coloring it in, and now I wanted to do a little bit of coloring, highlighting on the edges. So I'm using brushed corduroy distressing, and I'm using this thumb applicator, foam applicator, and just going around the edges very lightly. This creates a more defining look to the panel, and it enhances the look. When we will put it on the card base, it will really enhance the look. So just go over it lightly. You do not have to be perfect. I like that messed up look. I don't want it to blend completely there. I want it to stand out a little bit. And there you go, you have your panel ready. So I've decided to mount it on a craft card base. I also decided to add some twine. I'm going to balance out the design on the top with a pretty twine bow. And I mounted this panel on foam tape to the card base to add some dimension. I also added a fun sentiment. I heat embossed the sentiment on a black cardstock with some white embossing powder and added that afterwards. And for more interest in the background, I spritzed some water, and you can see little water splashes that interacted with the distressing and created the fern splatter pattern there. So that's it. I hope you like this card and try this technique out. Coming on to the fun part, here's a small giveaway to celebrate 100 subscribers to my YouTube channel. So if you're a subscriber, give a thumbs up to the video and comment here for a chance to win this lovely 6x6 paper pad from EcoPark Cartabella collection. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you like this. Thank you.